Let me have a quick show of hands, because I don't want to read for too long, because we will get, we need time for questions and stuff. Would people prefer to hear a very, very short, like 5 minutes from the new novel, or would they prefer to hear some poems or something much shorter? Novel? Hands up for 5 minutes of novel. Okay, hands up for 5 minutes of poems or something shorter. Novel wins. Good. Okay, now I have to... There we go. So, and it begins, I begin the book with a quote from Maurice Sendak. He said, "I remember my own childhood vividly. I knew terrible things, but I knew I mustn't let adults know I knew. It would scare them." Maurice Sendak. It was only a duck pond out the back of the farm. It wasn't very big. Letty Hempstock said it was the ocean, but I knew that was silly. She said they'd come here across the ocean from the old country. Her mother said that Letty didn't remember properly, and it was a long time ago, and anyway, the old country had sunk. Old Mrs. Hempstock, Letty's grandmother, said they were both wrong, and that the place that had sunk wasn't the really old country. She said she could remember the really old country. She said the really old country had blown up. So, it was the first day of the spring holidays. 3 weeks of no school. I woke early, thrilled by the prospect of endless days to fill however I wished. I would read, I would explore. I pulled on my shorts, my t-shirt, my sandals. I went downstairs to the kitchen. My father was cooking while my mother slept in. He always cooked breakfast on Saturdays. I said, "Dad, where's my comic?" He bought me a copy of Smash before he drove home from work on Fridays, and I would read it on Saturday mornings. "In the back of the car, do you want toast?" "Yes," I said, "but not burnt." My father did not like toasters. He toasted bread under the grill, and usually he burnt it. I went outside into the drive. I looked around. I went back into the house, pushed the kitchen door, went in. "Dad, where's the car?" "In the drive." "No, it isn't." "What?" The telephone rang and my father went out into the hall where the phone was to answer it. I heard him talking to someone. The toast began to smoke under the grill. I got up on a chair and turned the grill off. "That was the police," my father said. "Someone's reported seeing our car abandoned at the bottom of the lane." I said I hadn't even reported it stolen yet. "Right, we can head down now, meet them there." "Toast!" He pulled the pan out from beneath the grill. The toast was smoking and blackened on one side. "Is my comic there, or did they steal it?" "I don't know. The police didn't mention your comic." My father put peanut butter on the burnt side of the toast, replaced his dressing gown with a coat worn over his pajamas, put on a pair of shoes, and we walked down the lane together. We'd walked for perhaps 5 minutes down the narrow lane which ran through fields on each side when a police car came up behind us. It slowed and the driver greeted my father by name. I hid my piece of burnt toast behind my back while my father talked to the policeman. I wished my family would buy normal sliced white bread, the kind that went into toasters, like every other family I knew. My father had found a local baker's shop where they made thick loaves of heavy brown bread, and he insisted on buying them. He said they tasted better, which was, to my mind, nonsense. Proper bread was white and pre-sliced and tasted like almost nothing. That was the point. The driver of the police car got out, opened the passenger door, told me to get in. My father rode up front beside the driver. "These kids," said the policeman, "they think it's funny. Steal a car, drive it round, abandon it. They'll be locals." "I'm just glad it was found so fast," said my father. "Funny them leaving it down here, though," said the policeman, "because it's a long walk back to anywhere from here." We passed a bend in the lane and saw the white Mini over on the side in front of a gate leading into a field, tires sunk in the mud. We drove past it, parked on the grass verge. The policeman let me out, and the three of us walked over to the Mini while the policeman told my dad about crime in this area and why it was obviously the local kids had done it. Then my dad was opening the passenger side door with his spare key. He said, "Someone left something on the back seat." My father reached back and pulled the blue blanket away that covered the thing in the back seat, even as the policeman was telling him he shouldn't do that, and I was staring at the back seat because that was where my comic was. So I saw it. It was an it, the thing I was looking at, not a him. Although I was an imaginative child prone to nightmares, I persuaded my parents to take me to Madame Tussauds waxworks in London when I was 6 because I wanted to visit the Chamber of Horrors, expecting the movie monster chambers of horrors I'd read about in my comic books. I wanted to thrill to waxworks of Dracula and Frankenstein's monster and the Wolfman. Instead, I was walked through a seemingly endless sequence of dioramas of unremarkable, glum-looking men and women who'd murdered people, usually lodgers and members of their own families, and who were then murdered in their turn by hanging, by the electric chair in gas chambers. Most of them were depicted with their victims in awkward social situations, seated round a dinner table perhaps, as their poisoned family members expired. The plaques that explained who they were also told me the majority of them had murdered their families and sold the bodies to anatomy. It was then the word anatomy garnered its own edge of horror for me. I did not know what anatomy was. I knew only that anatomy made people kill their children. The thing in the back seat that had been covered by the blue blanket, I knew that blanket. It was the one that had been in my old bedroom on the shelf for when it got cold. Was not convincing either. It looked a little like the opal miner who lived with us, but it was dressed in a black suit with a white ruffled shirt and a black bow tie. Its hair was slicked back and artificially shiny. Its eyes were staring. Its lips were bluish, but its skin was very red. It looked like a parody of health. There was no gold chain around its neck. I could see underneath it, crumpled and bent, my copy of Smash, with Batman looking just as he did on the television, on the cover.
Monsieur Gaiman.